Hit subscribe to the DIY Writer to support your hardworking authors and also lessen your chances of ending up as a victim in their next book. The world's largest UFO conference, Contact in the Desert, announces the launch of their 8th annual and very first virtual event. This event is focusing on UFOs in the year of science, also consciousness in the future. This will be held June 24th to 28th, 2021. Contact in the Desert is renowned for its top lineup of experts in the fields of ufology, forbidden archaeology, government disclosure, alien phenomenon, crop circles, and much more. Contact in the Desert already is the largest UFO conference in history and will now be the largest UFO conference in the virtual world, with over 60 lectures, 40 workshops, 11 panels, featured speakers presentations, virtual tours to Giant Rock, and other interactive events. Go to contactinthedesert.com for more information and get your tickets now. Hey, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're at. This is Jeff Bacon with the DIY Writer Podcast. Today, I have a treat for you. We're going to be speaking with Terry Lovelace, who you can see right there. He's written a couple of books that I think I found them very interesting, and his story is it might be a little disturbing for some people, but I implore you to listen to it. I think it's something that a lot more people have experienced something along this lines or have at least heard about it. And I think it's good to bring these things out and talk about them. So without any further ado, Terry, how are you doing today?
I couldn't be better, Jeff. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's nice to be here.
It is absolutely my honor to have you on. The last book that I read of yours is The Devil's Den, The Reckoning. And I think it'd be good just to kind of jump right into it. And when we talk about alien abductions, I got to be honest with you. You're the very first person that I've talked to that's actually admitted or has directly experienced something like this. And I'm just going to let you kind of fly with it because I'm very interested in your story.
Sure. Kind of the nutshell version, which goes into greater depth in the first book, Incident at Devil's Den. And just a brief history of who I am. Again, my name is Terry Lovelace. I was born in St. Louis in 1955. I graduated from high school in 1973 and spent the next 6 years on active duty in the Air Force. From there, I finished a bachelor's degree in psychology and a law degree from Western Michigan and made my living in the law, first in private practice. Then I was Assistant Attorney General for the United States territory of American Samoa, the only U.S. territory south of the equator, full of great, big-hearted, lovely people, and just a beautiful place to live. And from there, I went to Vermont, kind of like the polar opposite, literally.
That is.
It is. I was state's attorney there for their board of medical practice, and retired in 2012 and moved to Dallas where my wife and I have our adult children. The experience that I had happened while I was on active duty in 1977. A friend of mine and I decided to go camping. And I'm not sure why. We were both city kids. Neither one of us had ever been camping in our lives. But like my friend used to say, hey, it ain't rocket science. So we bought a cheap tent. We packed some stuff. And we drove 6 hours down to Devil's Den State Park in the northwest corner of Arkansas. We were both NCOs stationed at Whiteman Air Force Base, which is still there today. It was a SAC base back when we were there, but today it's home to the B-2 bombers. And, so we got to the park, and we agreed per our pre-agreement was we'd dodge the ranger station, not stay in a campground, because we didn't want people hanging around left and right of us, and there's kids and other undesirables running around. And we wanted to be, we wanted to be real outdoorsmen, right? We'd never been camping, but we wanted to be real outdoorsmen, right? So we took a paved road till it turned to gravel, till it turned to dirt, and we came to a chain across the road that said, with a sternly worded "Keep Out" sign. And I told my friend, I said, "Well, we got to turn around." And he's like, "No, man, I got this." And he hops out of the car. He was observant enough to notice that what they'd done is they'd just taken this chain, made a loop, and put a padlock on it to form a noose. And they draped it over the opposing post on a nail. So he hops out, picks it up, lazy park rangers, I guess, picks it up, it drops to the ground, and we felt like, woohoo, we're in. We thought it was a nature preserve or something. And it turns out that that's actually not part of Devil's Den at all. It's belongs to the Bureau of Land Management. It's federal property.
Okay.
And I don't remember the images I sent you. I may have sent you a photograph of it.
Yep.
We stayed on top of this plateau, and I didn't bother looking for Google Earth images of it because I thought surely it'd be covered with 40-year-old mature trees by now, but it's not. And somebody goes up there with a tractor and a brush hog and keeps that clear cut.
Yep.
So it's a lot of money for the federal government to pay for gas and somebody's wage to go up there and cut the grass on top of a plateau in the middle of nowhere.
Well, it makes you think that, they know what's going on up there.
Yeah, they know what's going on up there.
When I read that and I saw the pictures, then I also looked to make sure that, is this real? So I did a little research myself, and it's like, okay. The fact that they keep it, that they do upkeep on it is, it's just interesting.
Yeah, I did a title search on it through the county, and it's deeded to the Bureau of Land Management and leased to a private individual.
Oh,
that
really?
I couldn't find out any information on. So, yeah, who knows? Who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah.
It's leased to a private individual, though, huh?
It is. And I think that's in purpose. So when you go and search, you see an individual's name as opposed to Bureau of Land Management.
Right.
Just a guess. Yeah.
That would, yeah.
So we made our way in 1977 to the top of this thing, and it was cool. It was a beautiful, like, meadow kind of plateau kind of thing. And we pitched the tent and did all the fun stuff you do when you camp. And we saw lights in the sky that turned into this giant triangle the size of a Walmart. And it parked right over the meadow. And we were kind of sitting off to the side. And this speaks to the influence that these things have over us. We were both not freaked out, not frightened a bit, not even inquisitive, not apathetic, but close to it, maybe disinterested.
Okay.
And I felt this wave of sedation wash over me as it came in, and then that shifted from that to sleepy. All I wanted to do was lay down in a tent and go to sleep. And with this thing, 3,000 feet over our heads, that's what we did. And while we were inside the tent and out, that's when they took us. And then the following morning, I found, my boots were unlaced, my socks were on sideways. Obviously, we've been dressed and redressed.
Right.
And so that's kind of the abduction in a nutshell. I wrote the second book, The Reckoning, because there were a lot of unanswered questions in the first book. For instance, what happened to Rodney Litterman? And I wrote the book in 2017. And during the year of 2017, I got the Arkansas Gazette, the Winslow paper, Russellville, Oklahoma paper, and I combed the paper every day looking for stories about Devil's Den.
Yeah. Because
the park system, if you're familiar with David Paulides and his Missing 411 book series, you know that government agencies, state and federal, are not forthcoming if you ask them for a list of people that are missing.
Yep.
So
I've read that. I don't have any experience with it, but
well, I tried through Bureau of Parks and Recreation in Little Rock to get a list of people that had gone missing. So I did my own search and found missing people from press reports going back to 1946, when a little girl named Catherine Van Alst went missing from the campsite, age 6. She was in flip-flops and a swimsuit. And she was missing for 7 days and 6 nights. It was late in the afternoon of the 7th day, and the search was going to shift from a rescue to a recovery. And a volunteer searcher from University of Arkansas named Porter Chadwick climbed up this steep ravine, like 2 or 3 miles away from the campsite. and got to the top of it. It'd been searched twice. And he calls out, "Catherine," and a little girl pops out from underneath this limestone outcropping. And he says, "My God, where have you been?" And she says, "I don't know. I woke up here this morning. And I just thought I'd wait till you come get me."
Wow.
He carries her back to the campsite. And it's strange. She, and the newspaper articles are easily found on the Pittsburgh Press with a search, 1946, Catherine Van Hoff's with a K, and also in the Kansas City Star. They had relatives in Kansas City. And they were from Pittsburgh, headed to El Paso, and decided to spend the night at Devil's Den. And she hadn't lost an ounce of weight. She was fully hydrated. Her mother said that her hair smelled clean, like it did the night before she vanished. And she had no memory. So it's a spooky place. It really is. I don't want to discourage anyone from going camping. I certainly wouldn't do it there, but anyone else, be my guest. But the second story I wanted to update was Rodney Litterman, because in my first book, I explained about him vanishing off the Butterfield Trail.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to the readers, I promise you, I'll give you an update when I know something. Well, I know something. And in March of 2019, about a year after I published Incident at Devil's Den, I got a press review, because I get notices whenever anything with Devil's Den pops up.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a young couple, and I called the Russellville Sheriff's Department and spoke to a deputy sheriff who gave me this story under conditions of anonymity.
Sure.
And he said that there was a young couple walking down the Butterfield Trail, a man and a woman, young people. And Butterfield Trail is paved. It's an easy walk. And they're walking along the trail, and the young lady says, "Is that an albino turtle?"
Mm-hmm.
And her friend says, "I don't know what you're talking about." And she points, and there's this 8-foot log that's like lying parallel to the trail. And in the center of the log, perfectly centered, is this football-shaped white object. And this is interesting because park ranger swore it wasn't there the day before, because it's right on the trail. 300 people walk past it every day, maybe more. Yep. And the guy goes over and picks it up, and it was bone, and it's the skull cap, very top of Rodney Litterman's skull, verified by the medical examiner in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. And that's all they ever found of Rodney Litterman.
Yep.
So that's the update.
I read that, and that type of stuff just kind of freaks you out. It's like, okay, so they dissected them and then they left that there. Why?
Exactly. My thought, that's a state, from my prosecutor days, that is a staged crime scene. Somebody put that there to make a statement. Right.
What is it? I just, that kind of stuff drives me nuts, because I like answers.
I do too. And sure, some kid might have picked it up in the middle of the forest and thought, well, this was kind of weird, and set it on the log and walked away. Sure, that's a possibility.
Sure. There's lots of possibilities, but the way it was staged and the way it was sat there, it could be just a coincidence like that, and it was found someplace else. But you'd also think that something like that would come out.
That trail. For anything close to that, they searched that area so well.
Yeah,
especially right off the trail.
What was it, the dogs? They sniffed its phone and just sat down. It's like, okay, so he was just lifted up, there is no more trail.
Right.
Which is weird, which, kind of tells you, this wasn't, some psycho living in the woods picking them up, because, that's going to leave a scent. Those dogs, track scents.
Absolutely.
And even if you're carrying somebody, they'll smell it if it, even if it's 6 foot up in the air over somebody's shoulder or whatever, they will find that body or get close to it, or at least, when the trail goes away.
Yeah.
But it's not that, the dog's just going to sit down and say, okay, this is the end, right where the crime happened, or, whatever, the abduction.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I think had he walked back to the truck, he would have met his friend on the way back.
Right.
So the fact that his friend didn't see him was kind
Very
of a red
weird.
flag. Yeah, just a weird place.
The other part of that in the beginning, when you talk about Toby and what happened, and you kind of reiterate what happened to you in the Air Force. I mean, don't talk to him, don't talk about this ever again, and you had orders. That's strange also.
I found out that's not strange.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really. I don't know. Maybe you've heard of, there's a guy named Robert Hastings who was part of congressional hearings on UFOs. He wrote a book called UFOs and Nukes, which was all about guys like me who were active duty and stationed on nuclear bases who had experiences. And I talked to him and he said, absolutely. He says, the first thing they do, two people have an experience. And he says, this is different from just seeing like a saucer dart across the sky.
Right.
If that happens, you might be hauled in, asked to sign an NDA and given a stern warning, what you saw was a prototype, don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a little more intimate involvement, like Toby and I had, standard procedure, you bust those guys up, you ship one off, you make sure that they are not connected to one another. He said it happens every time.
Really?
You know what else I found funny was, and I got lots of examples in that book in the back, is that groups of friends, like in Ray Fowler's book, the Allagash Four, where the four got four good friends. I mean, guys that hung together, drank together, fished together, hunted together. They're on a fishing trip to a lake off the Allagash River, and they're in a canoe. And long story short, they saw what they thought was a moon. Well, it wasn't the moon, and shined a light on them, lit up the inside of the canoe like insane. And then next thing they know, they're paddling back to shore, and their campfire, which should have burned for 8 hours, is embers. And they get back there and they just all go to bed. They get up the next morning, they go home. And it's kind of like the band breaks up, everybody went in different directions. Two of them were twins, and you know how close twins are, Jim and Jack Weiner. And even they drifted apart. So it was about 2 years later that Jim Weiner was having these terrible nightmares. And he calls his brother Jack and says, hey, let me ask you something. You having any nightmares? And he said, yeah, let me tell you about them. And they're having the same dream. And that's what broke the story. It got everybody back together. They got polygraphed, they got regressed, and that was the book. Excellent book.
So what do you have any ideas what the purpose of the abductions are? I mean, is it just experimentation? Is it, it's one of those things that, there's got to be a purpose behind it. And so when you went through it, I mean, did you remember anything that, poking and prodding or whatever? You said you were undressed and redressed,
Yeah, I do have memories of being on board the craft, which is crazy. And understand that I don't know how long we were on there. Our watches both stopped at 2:40, like AM, and never worked again. They were good watches. I mean, we were EMTs. We needed good watches. It was integral to the job. And mine stopped at 2:40s. Toby stopped at 2:41. And those watches never worked again. They were wind up mechanical. I don't know when they took us. So I don't know how long we were on this thing. But one of the memories that I have, and I had it pretty soon. I mean, it's kind of a longer story, but I had memories of being in a ship whenever Toby said to me, they took us and they hurt us, don't you remember? And that was a catalyst, boom, that my brain started racing and I had flashes of being inside this thing. And I think that they're true memories, and they've been nightmares for 40 years. But the memory that I had was I woke up, opened my eyes, and I'm standing upright with my clothing in my hand like this. And I can't move. Just like Calvin Parker, I was paralyzed. I could move my eyes. I could roll my eyes around and look all over. But I couldn't turn my head or move a foot or a finger, and nothing. And scared to death, scared to death. And I could perceive that Toby was next to me, although I couldn't quite see him, but I knew he was there somehow. And I don't know if they picked us up in this triangle and took us to some other place, but the thing that we were in was much bigger on the inside than it looked like from the outside. And that's hard to wrap my head around because the thing looked like a super Walmart from the outside. But at the inside, it looked like I was in an NFL stadium.
Wow.
And I don't get that. I don't know if they operate out of different physics than we have, or if they took us somewhere else. I don't know. I'm making assumptions. But that's where I found myself. And everything was stainless steel, white like porcelain, or gray.
Okay.
And little gray guys are running around all over the place, little ubiquitous grays, which I have a theory about, by the way, real quick.
Okay.
Obviously there's more than one type of entity that's gray, because I had a lot of people email me and say, no, you didn't, you're wrong. The guys had the rays I saw did this or that or the other thing, and they weren't like that at all. So, and I'm sure that their experience was valid. I'm just saying, I'm just trying to objectively and without embellishment report what I saw.
Right.
And the things that I saw, I called them in my first book, I think I called them worker bees or drones or something like that. And I think they're manufactured beings. I don't think they're sentient, in the way that you and I are. I think they're a combination of AI and maybe some biological material thrown in for good measure, and quantum computing, nanotechnology, who knows,
Right.
But I think they are manufactured. I think they are task-driven, non-living things. So
what makes you say that?
I saw a guy. It was actually the object of my story, and I wish I could tell you other than impression and the fact that they were always. You didn't see any slackers. I mean, they were running all over the inside of this thing, and they were all busy.
Okay.
They were all doing something, and that was just the impression that I had. I don't have anything. I don't have any proof or anything other than my assumption, but that's my assumption. But I did see a guy 6 foot tall, twice as tall as the Greys, a guy about my height, and he walked past my field of vision from right to left, and I followed him with my eyes, and I could see that he was wearing a gray garment of some kind, with a V-neck. And he wasn't gray. He was a chalkish pink, weird color. Yeah.
Okay.
He had no discernible ears, just a hole for the ear canal, 2 nostrils, a bump maybe for a nose, a slit for a mouth, no hair. And his eyes weren't hugely exaggerated like you see in the movies. They were more like a pair of wraparound Ray-Bans with a high gloss, like high gloss paint on them.
Okay.
And I never saw him blink. But by happenstance, I'm turning my head to the left, or I wish I was turning my eyes to the left as far as I could to keep this guy in my field of vision, because I could tell he was somebody in authority because he carried himself like somebody in authority. And as I'm straining my eyes to the left, just by happenstance, he turns his head and we locked eyes. And that was the most frightening part of the few memories that I have of being on the ship, because when we locked eyes, I felt this guy was in my head. I don't know how else to describe it. He was in my head. In an instant, he knew me. He knew my wife. He knew my secrets. He knew my dreams, my hopes, my family. He knew everything about me. And all I got back from those eyes was just intellect. Just a weird, the analogy that I give for this, and it's a good one because it's true, is that when our kids were little, we had an English setter, right? And she'd put her head in my lap, and I'd pet her on top of the head, say, "Oh, good dog." And she'd look up at me with them big brown eyes like setters have. And, those eyes radiated to me loyalty and trust. And I'm sure she read my eyes as love. But we each knew our respective roles. She knew that I was the alpha in this equation. When I met this entity on this ship, I was the dog. I felt humbled. I felt incredibly inadequate, intellectually, emotionally, physically. I mean, I think that this, whatever it was that I locked eyes with, I think is 500 rungs up the evolutionary ladder from us. And that was an epiphany to know that, at age 22, to find out that we are not the be all end all, top of the food chain, that there are other living entities out there that are much more advanced than we are.
So this is going to sound like a dumb question, but yeah, it seems to me like we're more like a petri dish than somebody they want to contact and actually, begin communication with. It seems like they're experimenting and looking at us and just kind of almost playing with us, as far as, I mean, they take people for, different durations. Some make it back, some don't. Some, lose their minds. Some, I mean, there's all sorts of things that happen to these people that are abducted. This isn't necessarily a peaceful meeting, I guess. And the thing that really bothers me is that, again, the U.S. government knows what's going on in these locations. I mean, obviously, they're mowing, landing pads for them, and, they keep on releasing things that kind of make you wonder how long are they actually in contact with them? Are they, are there plans being made? I mean, there's all sorts of conspiracy theories that you could come up with, but I mean, it just really boggles the mind that somebody that far advanced would even be worried about us. It'd be like, us, experimenting on ants for some reason, or not even ants.
I don't think that's a bad question at all. I think that's more like a good observation. I made the same observation. And I didn't quite feel like I was on the level of mold in a petri dish when I locked eyes with this guy, but it was very clear that he was the superior of the two.
Mm-hmm.
And, people wonder why they don't just sit down and talk to us. And, I had a lot of anger. I mean, I suffered dehydration and some burns and some injuries from this. And I was really angry for a while. But you know what? In the end of it, they didn't kill us. My friend didn't adjust well and had a bad outcome.
Right.
But, I'm not sure. I don't think that was an intentional outcome on their part. I think that the injuries we suffered are the difficult, because I had my struggles too. I'll be candid with you. I suffer PTSD, and I still sleep with a light on.
And you're very open about that in your book.
Yeah, because I think there are a lot of people out there suffering from the same stuff. And they, people write to me and say, "Holy cow, I got the same thing going on with me,"
Mm-hmm.
So that was refreshing. I put that email in the back of my first book, and I said, "Look, I'm not a doctor or a therapist, but if you've had an experience, I'd love you to share it with me, and I'll return your email." I thought, I'll get 100 emails maybe if I'm lucky.
Yeah.
I got 1,400 at the time that I wrote The Reckoning. I'm sitting on about 1,700 now.
Wow.
People write to me and tell me, and it's such a privilege that people write to me and shared with me stories they've shared with no one else.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of a data guy. I like to keep, I like to lay out things on an Excel spreadsheet for some reason. And I look for commonalities. And I found some commonalities.
Do you mind sharing that, or?
Sure. Because I think it's interesting. The demographic, the bulk of the really intimate encounters happen for people between the ages of 50 and 76.
Really? Okay.
That demographic are the ones that reported to me. Abduction. Now there are some. That's out of a pretty big sample, and there are plenty of examples of young people, especially young women, missing fetuses. Wake up. They are diagnosed as pregnant, They are, given their prenatal vitamins, had their prenatal exam. They're in their 10th, 11th week. And they wake up one morning and they know immediately they're not pregnant. And the lump on their belly is gone, and they go to the hospital and they find no evidence that they'd ever been pregnant. And I have a story in the back of my book about that. Matter of fact, I got a couple of cool stories in the back of my book. I'd like to share one or two if we have enough time.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I got. This is the first story in the back of The Reckoning, and it's first for a reason. The woman is a 76-year-old woman from Henderson, Nevada, writes to me in a email and says, "I read your book, and we found it disturbing, and some of it is disturbing. Like I say, I'm not angry at ET anymore. I'm kind of over it. Honestly, I think if I sat down and could talk to ET, he'd say, or she or it would say, hey, no hard feelings, just doing our job, man."
Yeah.
But this woman told me that 76-year-old woman from Nevada said that she and her husband in March of 1968, he was a nephrologist, a kidney doctor at a Las Vegas hospital. And they used to travel from Vegas to Reno once a month because, like all doctors, he's working 70 hours a week. But the bonus he gets is he gets 140 a weekend a month. So that was their time. They were fairly newly wedded, and that was their time to be together, go out, have fun, and talk and chat, catch up on things.
Sure.
So they usually left and made the drive from Vegas to Reno. They usually did it in the morning, and so driving the daylight hours, avoid traffic. But he got stuck at the hospital, so they left later. So they always stopped at the halfway point, which was a little town called Tunapa, and it's still there.
Mm-hmm.
And right in the kind of middle of Nevada, right between Reno and Vegas. And there's a place there called the Stagecoach, like a truck stop and diner. It's still there, although today it's called the Station. And she said they would stop, they'd eat a nice meal, and then continue on their trip to Reno, gas up and the like. And she said, that's what we did this night. We pulled in there about 9:00 p.m. We had a nice meal and gassed up the car and then proceeded north. And I asked her, I said, can I ask, did you or your husband have anything to drink? Do you have a cocktail with dinner? And she said, no, we didn't. We normally don't. We wait until we get into Tunapa to the hotel, and then we usually have a drink at the bar before we go to bed.
Sure.
I said, oh, cool. That makes sense. And I asked, do you wear eyeglasses? And she says, no. I said, how about your husband? Good eyesight? Yep, nothing wrong with his eyesight. And I said, this is a dumb question, but was your windshield clean, or was it dirty? She says, nope. They drove a Peugeot that they bought in France. How cool is that?
Yeah.
And had shipped back. And so that was kind of her husband's toy. So the car was always immaculate. So no dirty windshield to deal with. And I asked those questions because of what they saw. They get back on the highway. They're 10 miles outside of Tunapa, and they see this white light on the horizon, or a glow, I should say. And they crest the hill, and here's like a small box store about the size of like a McDonald's or something. And it is lit up like crazy on the inside with lights pouring out of the windows. And it's obviously a retail store. And it is draped all around the top with miles of Christmas tree lights blinking on and off, and some not blinking at all. And on top of the store, in big neon letters, it spells out the word Christmas.
Okay.
And she said, I was absolutely blown away. She said, this is March of 1968. I'd never seen a store devoted to the holiday of Christmas before, much less in the middle of the desert in March. So she tells her husband, she says, pull over. So he does, and he pulls over the car to the side of the road, and they're right in front of the place. And this is where it gets kind of weird. She says, yeah, it was kind of weird. We were looking at this, we're just mesmerized by this thing, and we zoned out for a minute. And I said, well, can you define zoned out for me? And she says, I don't know. It's like we were just mesmerized staring at this thing. And we didn't talk for a little while. And I said, can you describe a little while? And she said, maybe minutes. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked her, I said, do you think that you had any missing time? And she kind of chuckled and said, well, if I did, how would I know? That's good. That's a good answer.
Yeah.
And she says to her husband, she says, Paul, pull in. Let's pull in. I want to go inside. I think they're open. They're all lit up. And he's like, well, tell me where the driveway is, and I'm happy to. And she says, it was her words exactly were, who would expletively build a store without an egress? There was no driveway to pull into. There was no paved parking lot. There was nothing but sand and sagebrush in front of the store.
Okay.
Makes no sense.
No.
So they stare at it for a while, and Paul says, I've had enough of this. We're going to Tonopah. And he pulls back onto the road. And I asked her, I said, did you pass any other traffic, any other cars? She doesn't remember any. Could have. Mm-hmm. They drove to Tonopah. And what was unusual was this time was really precious to them. And they always talked. She never slept in the car. And this time, when he got back on the highway, he drove and she fell fast asleep just shortly after they got on the highway. And she said, I'd never done that before, never done it since. I said, well, did you eat a heavy meal? And she says, well, kind of, but nothing unusual, nothing that should make me that tired. And her husband woke her up as they got inside the city limits of Reno. And they got to the hotel, and they felt really out of sorts. They didn't go have their cocktail like they usually did. They didn't hang up their clothing. They dumped their stuff and they just went to bed. Slept late the next day and felt really kind of her words were out of sorts for that day. But then the following day felt back to normal. And they didn't discuss it. They didn't discuss it at all until the ride home. And Paul says, hey, let's stop at that stupid little Christmas store. And they started comparing notes about, well, what did you see? And it would have been cool if they both could have sat down separate from one another and each drawn a picture of what they saw and then compared notes. But they agreed on everything except that she saw a brick building and was certain it was brick. He saw a wooden structure made out of rustic barnwood. But every other detail was exactly the same. And she said, I've never told this story before. I'm 76. My husband passed away in 1983. But I just thought it was an important story and I wanted somebody else to know. And I said, well, thanks very much. And I asked her, I said, did you have nightmares? Can I ask about this thing? And she said, oh, yeah, ever since. Still do. And she says, my husband would not talk about it. My husband would not discuss the issue. But she said about, once, maybe twice a year at most, she'd have this dream. And the dream doesn't sound frightening. She dreamt that they were back in the car looking at this thing. And the inside of the place was lit up. And they could see shadow movement in back of the glass. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, that dream just flips around. And she wakes up and, has to get up, turn lights on, watch TV, have a bowl of Fruit Loops or whatever you have to do to get back to sleep when you have a nightmare. And so I thought it was a cool story. Like I said, 76-year-old women who are cognitively intact, well-educated, have no reason to make up a fairy tale.
And they never, the apparition never returned, just only in their dreams.
Only in a dream. I left that out. When they made the drive back, they intended to stop at this Christmas store. They knew right where it was, at the 10-mile mark right out of town. Yeah. It wasn't there. Nothing there but sage and sandbrush sand and sagebrush. That was it. So
that's freaky.
Isn't that freaky?
It really is, so, if you want to dive into that a little bit, they were mesmerized by something and some sort of image or something was placed in their mind to cover up what they really saw.
I think that's exactly right. I think that's spot on. I think it's what people call screen memory.
Yep.
They were seeing a UFO, and but they put that into their mind. Just like, when I was a kid, I saw little monkeys in my room. I had people write to me, I mean, dozens, who said that they saw white glowing orbs. They saw raccoons, owls, lots of owls, deer, Disney characters.
Yeah.
One guy told me that a clothes hanger with a shirt on it would come out of his room, out of his closet at night. Just crazy stuff. But it didn't scare him. He thought it was kind of humorous. And I think that's what they do. I think when they're dealing with children, like they dealt with me in my childhood, they can appear in a way that the child will find most benign.
What I find interesting is that there are some people that have those experiences as a child. They see things, and I think a majority of parents just chalk it up to active imagination, seeing things, it's just whatever. But there's a lot of people that have had abduction stories that can go back to their childhood and have had weird things like that, the boogeyman in the closet, the monster under the bed, the whatever climbing around. And yeah, even with my youngest daughter, or my she's not my youngest, but my 3-year-old, she can wake up from a dream and have a very vivid recollection of something happening in her room, and it's like, okay, this is really weird. What are you seeing? Is this demons, angels, aliens, whatever you want to call it? It seems weird. And there have been times when I've woken up to a sound, and as a parent is like, okay, what was that? Who's up? Who's knocking something over? And it would be something in, the kid sitting there laying there sleeping, and something got knocked off the dresser that shouldn't have. And it's just like, it's just weird.
That is weird.
So gravity, the wind, whatever you want to say, windows aren't open, it's just weird stuff like that happens every now and then. It's like, I don't know.
We were talking about commonalities that I discovered on a spreadsheet. And one of the weird commonalities that I found was people as an adult, be it 18 to 76, can report that as a young child between the ages of, on the low end, anywhere from 2 with, 4 being the median. So in that age group of 4 to 6, they report having, or 2 to 6 rather, they report having a vivid dream when they were that young. So people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s will email me and say, I had this stupid little dream when I was a kid, and doesn't matter what the dream is, maybe nonsensical, maybe whatever. But they say that, that dream is as crystal clear in their head as the morning that they woke up with it. They've carried it all their life. And I ask every one of them, I asked 3 questions. I said, can you tell me what you got for Christmas that year? Can you tell me who was at your birthday party? And can you tell me where your family went on vacation that year? And those are the 3 questions I ask everybody. And very, very few people could answer that. A lot of people could say, well, I think that, Joe must have been at my birthday party because we were best friends. But they, they couldn't be sure.
That's interesting.
Those were the people that tended to have experiences, like higher level experiences.
So I guess my theory would be, they played with the mind. They put something in there to cover up whatever was happening or whatever images they wanted to put in there. But it also affected other memories for a long duration, before and after that event, which is, again, the human mind is strange in the fact, how it remembers things and how certain triggers can, something can trigger you to have a memory about something, and it's very vivid, it's very real. And it's like, that couldn't be real. That couldn't be anything I must be making that up. There must be something crossed up there. You know, I mean, whatever. It's very confusing.
It is. It is. I've seen UFOs. I've seen flying saucers and stuff, and I know that sounds crazy, but you know, a lot of people go through a lifetime and never see anything in the sky. And I saw a flying saucer when I was 8 in 1963, and I was in my backyard playing with a bow and arrow, and this is in the city. I mean, we're living in, you know, brick row houses,
Mm-hmm.
at the turn of the 20th century, and you know, little bitty backyards. And this was a beautiful day in May. I think it was a Saturday, I think, but the windows are open. I can hear the television inside the house. And I mean, there are people outside hanging up laundry, cutting grass. There's cars, there's kids, there's cats and dogs. And, you know, it's a busy Saturday afternoon in the neighborhood, right?
Yep.
And I'm looking down and I'm loading an arrow into the notch of the bow string. And as I'm looking down, I saw a perfectly circular shadow move across my feet. And I looked up, and over my head, probably 50 feet, I'm guessing. I don't have good recollection as a
Mhm.
kid, but I saw this flying saucer, because UFO wasn't in our vocabulary back then. And I thought, when I saw this thing, I thought in an instant, I thought, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. And I mean, you know, the word sexy wasn't in my vocabulary. I don't remember the word that I used. I think it was bitchin', if I can say that.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, so I thought that this thing was, you know, in the way that like a new Alfa Romero sports car on a showroom floor kind of has that cool vibe to it.
Yes.
This had that vibe.
Hmm.
And I was just enamored with it. I'm just looking at every inch of it. My eyes, I'm trying to drink in every bit of it I can with my eyes. But what was interesting was a sudden and distinct auditory change happened as soon as I laid eyes on the thing. I mean, like somebody hit a switch. It sounded like I had my hands pressed against both my ears. So the sounds of the neighborhood that had been so loud before were all muffled, distorted. And there was some kind of electromagnetic thing going on. I could smell ionized air like you smell after a thunderstorm.
Okay.
And the fine hairs, I didn't have a lot of hair, but the fine hairs on my wrist stood up, or on my arm, my forearm. And I remember staring at this thing thinking there should be a seam, a rivet, a marking, CCCP or USAF or something, right?
Yeah, right.
But there was nothing. And it was a little bit unstable, and it's kind of wobbling in the breeze. And this is weird. I don't know what possessed me to do this, but I dropped my bow and arrow and I laid down on the ground thinking I could get a better view of it. And that makes no sense to me. And I don't actually remember lying down, but because the grass was freshly cut, and you know, I get grass stains on my clothes. My mom's gonna be mad.
Right.
And I'm just laying there looking at it, and then it just kind of lifts to starboard a little bit to clear the power lines, and it shoots off, and it goes like from 0 to 500 miles an hour and is gone. And then instantly all the sound comes back, and I'm back in the normal world. And my eyes are glued to the hole in the sky where it vanished. And
Sure.
I mean, there was no literal hole, but you know, the spot where it, not a cloud in the sky, but the spot in the sky where it disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And I yelled for my mother, and my mom comes running out, and I said, "Mom, did you see it? It was so cool. It was a flying saucer." And she's like, "Stop saying that. You will not say that. You did not see a flying saucer." And she dragged me in the house and said, "All right, Terry, you know." And I couldn't understand. At age 8, I mean, I was a pretty straight kid. I didn't tell stories or lies, or I was a straight little kid. And I couldn't understand why she wouldn't believe me. And then my dad comes home, right? Dad comes in and says, "Now, what's all this business about flying saucers?"
Oh, sure.
And yeah, and I was always correcting his grammar, which really made him angry, and I should have known better. I said, "No, singular, not plural, just one." And that got us off to a bad start. And he says, "Look, you can't say that you saw a flying saucer. People think there's something wrong with you.
Right.
They'll think there's something wrong with us." And then I got it. I'm like, oh, I get it now. Yeah, it's that 1960 conformity thing. We got to be like the TV sitcom.
Well, there's a stigmatism to it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, anybody who talks about this type of stuff will have, I mean, there's people out there be like, oh yeah, whatever,
Yeah.
Roswell, yeah, okay, go
Yeah.
off, have your fun, get your tinfoil hat on, so on and so forth. But there are a lot of unexplainable things that, even as advanced as we think our science is, has no idea how it works, what it is, or anything like that. That's why they call them unidentified flying objects.
Yeah.
Because we don't know, and they
We
are
don't know.
there.
And it's the same thing with, I got letters from people who had Bigfoot experiences. Now, I've never seen a Bigfoot.
Right.
But people wrote to me and laid out a very cogent argument for what they saw.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they didn't sound like they were making up a story for the heck of it, and they just wanted to share it. Same with, I had a couple of NDE, near-death experience survivors write to me and say, do you know how much we have in common? And I honestly, God, didn't think about it. And I'm like, I know, I don't think I do know.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, look, we both had an event that changed our lives. And now that's true. 1977, I was 22 years old. I went to that campsite as a teenager, and I left as an adult. No
Sure.
question in my mind. I mean, that was, pivotal point in my life. I tend to measure my life, pre-1977 and post-1977.
It was a milestone event.
It was like the birth of my children. Yep. Sorry, kids, but yeah, it was. It was. And same with these NDE people. They report having incredibly positive experiences, at least the ones that wrote to me, the few that wrote to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I say, when I look back at my experience, maybe I'm just softened over 40 years passage of time, but I think they maybe operate from a different set of ethics than you and I and the rest of humanity operates from or should operate from.
I can believe that because, the societal ethics or morals that we apply to ourselves are either based in, some sort of a religious base or, scientific or, just rules of the society that we live in.
Yeah.
And those can, I mean, you see it now, even with certain things that happen, as you see in the news, that, those can evolve or devolve very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody's coming from, I don't think we're just talking, far distant planets. I think that, it could be different, dimensions. It could be different, time periods. I mean, yeah, I kind of open myself up to all those different theories. I think, somebody we have in common that we know, Bruce Soldheim, called attention to it in one of our shows about, quantum theory and, how that has changed a lot of aspects on, how you think of things. I mean, it's not just men from Mars, or somebody traveling billions of light years. It's not like that. It can be, opening up a portal and just going into it and going into, like you said, a different dimension or a different time period, or, maybe it's even just a wormhole that they drop in and out of, to get from one place to another. I mean, we don't know.
That's right. We don't know. And, we were taught, at least I was taught in school. I wasn't taught anything about quantum physics. I was taught, old school Newtonian, gravity,
Mm-hmm.
objects in space obeying Newtonian physics and, revolving around and the effects of gravity, but nothing on the quantum level. And it's a whole different field, a whole different area with a whole different set of rules.
Right.
And if somebody comes at this with that Newtonian physics standpoint, they're going to say, well, it's impossible because nobody could traverse the universe, go faster than the speed of light and get here. That's just not possible.
I think my usual argument to somebody that has that type of a response to anything unexplainable is, okay, go back in the late 60s and watch a little show called Star Trek, and then compare that to how we live today. And just some of the devices that they used and some of the theories that they had and everything else. You know, as corny of a show as it was, guess what? It predicted an awful lot of things that we enjoy today, like the cell phone, you know, these little mini computers that you know, are communication devices that you strap to your hip and you have it everywhere, you know.
And warp drive. People were talking, physicists are talking about warp drive. I talked, matter of fact, with Lou Elizondo, who came and spent 2 days with me. We sat down and had dinner, and over dinner he was talking about the possibility of a warp drive, collapsing space in front of you,
Mm-hmm.
moving forward and expanding the space in back of you. And he said, we're going to go places, but it's not going to be by burning oxygen and hydrogen.
Right.
So,
That type of stuff, you know, even though, I mean, it was, you know, was it 50 years ago now? You know, 40, 50 years ago, when that type of stuff was being written, you know, you kind of wonder, okay, where did Gene Roddenberry come up with that? Number one. Number two, you know, what an imagination, or, you know, however you want to theorize that, whatever conspiracy theory you want to go with. But on the other hand, how much of that is actually came true, and how much of our technology is actually based on fictionary type things like that? You know, at the time it was just fiction. It was just science fiction. Oh my gosh, you know, this is so cool. Look at these. And, you know, every year we step closer and closer to that type of stuff. You know, some of the technologies and technology booms that we've had, and how computers are progressing and everything else, you know, that exploratory nature of the human race, I think gets us closer and closer to seeing what's actually going on, or at least having a better idea.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. It's amazing. I tell you, I look at, Gene Roddenberry was obviously a genius. And, I look at Steven Spielberg's, my event happened in June of 1977.
Oh,
And
Close Encounters.
yeah, that came out in November 1977.
Yeah.
And I didn't see it. I couldn't watch science fiction after this. I didn't, I shied away from everything UFO related. And
Sure.
until about 2012, when I was retired and I had these X-rays taken, and I found these anomalous objects in my body, and that kind of drove it home to me that these things had put their hands on me, and that was hard for me to process, and that was really the catalyst to write books and speak about it openly. Was
what I find interesting, and I kind of want to get your take on this. So you had an experience when you're 8 years old, and you've talked about having other experiences throughout your life, including the milestone event at Devil's Den. You know, do you think it was predetermined, or you're pre-picked for this? You know, that your abduction was imminent, and it was actually, you know, they were there kind of watching over you and seeing when you got to a certain point, and then picking you up for an experiment. I mean, is that possible?
Sure, it's possible. I mean, I never thought of it that way. I never understood that question, why me? Because I don't see myself as anything special. I mean, I'm pretty much an average guy. I mean, just a civil servant, and I don't get why I would be interesting at all.
But would you see that? I mean, being inside your own skull versus somebody, you know, observing you for years and years and years, I don't think you'd necessarily know.
Yeah, I have no
You know,
idea.
what makes you special, or, you know, maybe it's, you know, something contained within your DNA, or, you know, something that, you know, made it interesting enough to, hey, we need to, you know, explore this more.
And it could just be like us picking a lion off the Serengeti plain. It could be something as simple as a random sample. Well, we
Yep.
picked up a truck driver, we picked up a CPA. Let's grab a lawyer. No, seriously, and
No, yeah.
make a statistically valid sample,
Mhm.
and if they really are studying us. I think they are studying us. I do. I think they've tracked me. Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, I'm making a connection where there might not be anything, but it seems weird to me when I read people's stories and they have, different experiences throughout their childhood. And then all of a sudden there's an abduction event or two, or, and they continue to see things. It's almost like, am I under surveillance of some sort? Or, the other thing is, that mesmerizing effect, maybe they're, maybe certain people are more susceptible to it than not. And maybe those are the people they want to pick up. I mean, it's all so interesting and also weird and also horrifying all at the same time. So it kind of stirs up, I think, emotions, all sorts of different emotions. But I also think the people that think that, they either glom onto religion and say, okay, this is not possible, or, some sort of, like you said, Newtonian science. I think they glom onto that because they have to have some sort of belief of that they're in control.
Yeah. This has to be explainable. They can't accept the unexplainable.
Right. And, the fact that it's unexplainable makes it not true. And I think that's nuts.
That's the Dunning-Kruger effect. I don't know if you've ever heard, I bet you've heard of it. That's where.
Yes, I've heard of it.
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. So,
but
yeah, people have a hard time accepting the fact that they might be wrong about a particular topic and seeing another perspective.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I see this in corporate life all the time, being a computer guy, no, it couldn't possibly be this. No. This is what happened, and because they don't understand it on a very simple level, they tend not to, I'm the bad guy instead of the, I did something to them, or, it's this damn computer or whatever, versus, okay, this is what you did. I can prove it, and it's that little disbelief of somebody that, may have a good amount of influence over a company or whatever, and not being able to say, maybe I was wrong about it. Yeah. Or being able to believe that they did something wrong because they've never done anything wrong in their life, right. And expand that out to something like this. And it's like, that couldn't possibly happen because it didn't happen to me. Would you remember? Because they replace your memories. Would you remember if they didn't want you to remember something? I mean, there's all these different, possibilities and I think mostly that disbelief comes from people that have never had their life totally go out of control.
Yeah,
they've never been in a status of total chaos. So obviously they can't conceive of it.
Yeah. Well, when Dunning and Kruger were putting that study together, one of the standard questions they asked were, could you rate yourself as a driver? And something like 88% of people rated themselves as above average drivers. So I live in Dallas. I can tell you that's absolutely untrue, at least in Dallas.
Oh no, it's true in Wisconsin too.
I bet.
There are a lot of people that think they're really good drivers and they're not.
Yeah.
The thing that amazes me is how much faith it takes to drive in Wisconsin.
Faith?
Yeah, it really does. You have to have faith because they don't know how to merge into traffic. Oh. So there's a car, and here's an on-ramp. And they just kind of, I'm going to meet here. And this guy is going to, move over if he can, or slow down or speed up. But I'm just going to go right in, Yeah. It's that way in Chicago, and it's that way in Dallas too. But
it is too.
It is. I have a lot of faith in that person, either in front of me or behind me, that they're going to do the right thing and let me in, because I take it right down to the point to where there is no shoulder left. I'm either going to hit the embankment or that car. So
that car. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like playing chicken almost. But you know what? I don't know where the rules of civility went when it comes to driving. I mean, there are a lot of nice people out there in cars. There are 3 or 4, but but that rule of civility. I mean, if you met that same person going into a door, you'd probably hold it up. They'd probably hold it open for you through a doorway. But gosh darn, they're not going to let you get in front of them. Not a chance.
The only thing I remember is my my driver's ed teacher was trying to explain how to merge, and we were in a small town in the middle of South Dakota, and there wasn't a whole lot of merging going on. You know, you'd wait for a tractor maybe, or try and speed up so you can get ahead of the tractor. But, you know, that was it. It was more about passing than anything else. But he always said, yeah, shoot the hole, you know, find the slot, shoot the slot, you know. And so I still remember it to this day. It's like, okay, there's my hole, speed up, slow down. Okay, there I go. You know, I don't make a hole happen in traffic. I shoot the hole, you know, but yeah, I don't know.
Good advice.
So we went from abductions to driving lessons. That's pretty interesting.
I thought so. Yeah.
Anything else you want to add to the conversation? I mean, you have both of these books, and they're, I don't know how to say it, but they're well written, and they are captivating. They really are. You really have to read them in order. I mean, you don't have to, but it makes a lot more sense if you do Devil's Den and then do the Reckoning. It does. You know, the story that's there is just incredible. Yeah, and also the fact that you have 1,700 emails from other people that have had experiences that you can collate and actually see similarities between those experiences. I mean, it's just it's a crazy thing. I think it's going to start happening more and more, or maybe not happen more and more, but be reported more and more, because I think there's more of an openness nowadays to accepting weird stuff. And I think that's attributed to the creation of the internet over the last 30 years.
Oh, I think you're right about that. Yeah, the sharing of ideas. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, you know what I would like to say before I go, give a shout out to my friends at Contact in the Desert. That's going to happen. Yeah, June 25th through 28th. I'll be there. Whitley Strieber, a whole bunch of really cool people will be there. So if you have a chance, check out their website, Contact in the Desert.
And I will have those links in the show notes. Absolutely. I was thinking about doing a little blurb right ahead of this, just so that we could promote it. It is, if you go to the website, it's a completely affordable conference. You can be there virtually if you want. So I mean, you don't have to worry about traveling or social distancing or anything else. It is an incredible lineup of speakers. It really is. I mean, it's kind of the who's who of this entire community. And I think that you would exit this conference with hopefully a deeper understanding of what's going on, but also maybe a new viewpoint or two.
Yeah.
On this type of a subject, with whether it's paranormal or aliens, or even if you think it's angels and demons, I think there's enough commonality between those three very broad subjects to say it might all be the same thing.
Ooh, that's a great, it's a great observation, because I've made that observation where if you take NDEs and Bigfoot and ghosts and UFOs and abductions, and somewhere you're going to find a thread of commonality that runs through all of it, that I think probably goes back to maybe some source, who knows, but I think that's there.
Yeah,
I do. Oh, my books are available on Amazon. Incident at Devil's Den is available in an audiobook that I recorded in my own voice, because I wanted to tell my story, and it was too cheap to pay a voice artist. I mean, and The Reckoning, I'm working on an audiobook. The recording studio was closed because of COVID, so it's just reopened. So I should have The Reckoning out in an audiobook within weeks, I hope.
Very cool. Within weeks. Okay.
I'm hoping. Yes, I got half of it done.
All right. Very cool. Very cool. So we talked about Contact in the Desert and your books and your audiobooks and everything else. If somebody has an experience they'd like to share with you, I would say go to terrylovelace.com and you can be contacted there.
Or you know what? You're welcome to contact me directly at terrylovelace@yahoo.com. That's my personal email. I respond to every single email. Every morning I make a pot of coffee and get up and do it. So
Get on the emails.
I'm happy to talk to you. If you've got something you want to share, talk to me.
Very cool. Very cool. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I would love it if you'd come back at some point in time and we can talk some more. What would be kind of cool is maybe you, me, and Bruce.
Oh, I love it.
That would be like a 3-hour conversation. That would be it would be killer.
That would be killer. That would be
really
great.
would. Dr.
Bruce is an amazing man, and we are so much on the same wavelength on so many things. It would be a great hour and a half, 2 hours.
That would be where I just sit back and I just learn from you two. Okay, what next? I'm gonna have to, luckily it's recorded so I can take notes.
Yes.
And then catch up. But anyway, again, I thank you very much for the time that you give me today.
You're sure welcome. I thank you. It's fastest hour of my life, I got to tell you.
It was a great conversation. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. And I'm even after reading through your books, I'm still overwhelmed with the information. I really am. It provokes an awful lot of thought, and I want to do some more research and be a little smarter for the next time I talk to you. But
I thought you were pretty on top of your game today.
Yeah, well, every now and then lightning strikes or a plain squirrel finds a nut. But anyway, with that, I'm going to call this show to a close. Thank you very much for listening. This is Jeff with the DIY Writer, thanking Terry Lovelace again for coming on the show. I want everybody to realize that life is good. Things are getting better. Keep your chin up and keep a positive attitude, because that's the only way you're going to get through it. But with that, have a great day. Bye-bye.
Please hit the subscribe button. I get a bonus for every subscriber, and I only need 1,506 more to become a full-time paid employee. Help me, please.